Light in the Shadow of the Spire Bookscommunitty. See, this book is a product of my own imagination and effort. All characters, events, locations, and plotlines described herein are original and have not been copied from any other sources. Chapter 1, Echoes of Oblivion. The dust of oblivion swirled over the remnants of the once magnificent city of Arcadia. Skyscrapers that had pierced the heavens centuries ago now resembled the skeletons of titans, their metallic bones covered in rust and strange, glowing growths. The wind whistling through shattered windows made long, mournful sounds, as if lamenting a bygone era. Alira, wrapped in a tattered cloak of synthetic fabric, cautiously stepped across the cracked tiles of the central square. Her eyes, the color of molten gold, carefully scanned the ruins. In her hands, she held an ancient scanner, flickering with a dim blue light. The device remained stubbornly silent, finding no trace of the energy she so desperately sought. "Nothing," she whispered, her voice lost in the moans of the wind. "Nothing again." Behind her, there was a soft rustling sound. Alira instantly turned, her hand sliding to the hilt of an energy pistol hidden beneath her cloak. A figure emerged from behind the debris of a ruined fountain. Tall, clad in dark armor, with a face hidden behind a helmet's visor. "You again, Stalker," Alira said with weary resignation, lowering her hand. Stalker approached silently. His armor was covered in traces of numerous forays into the contaminated zones. The only bright spot was a glowing symbol on his chest plate, a stylized image of a phoenix. "Did you find anything?" Stalker asked, his voice muffled from beneath his helmet. Alira shook her head. "Only echoes of the past. This planet is dead, Stalker. We're wasting our time." "Don't say that, Alira," Stalker countered. "Legends don't arise from nothing. They say the heart of the city is still hidden in the depths of Arcadia, a source of energy capable of reviving civilization." Alira scoffed. "Legends. Tales for the desperate. We've been searching for this mythical heart for 20 years, and what have we found? Only graves and ghosts." "But today could be different," Stalker said firmly, pointing north, where the tallest tower in Arcadia, the Spire of Oblivion, loomed through the dust haze. "My sensors registered a weak energy pulse in that direction. Perhaps it's what we've been looking for." Alira looked at the spire. Its summit was lost in the murky haze, shrouded in an aura of grim mystery. She felt skepticism, but at the same time, a tiny spark of hope flickered in her heart. "All right," she sighed. "Let's go. But if this is another trap or a mirage, I swear by the stars, Stalker." Stalker nodded, and they moved towards the Spire of Oblivion, two solitary figures against the backdrop of a dying city, haunted by the echoes of a long-gone era and the fragile hope for a future. Chapter 2, Shadows of the Spire. Alira and Stalker cautiously moved forward, stepping over the debris of twisted metal and shattered glass. The scanner in Alira's hands began to flicker faintly, picking up barely perceptible energy fluctuations. "It seems you were right," Alira whispered, her voice tight with tension. "There's something here." Suddenly, a figure sprang from behind the corner of a collapsed wall. Not human. A tall, gaunt creature with long, clawed limbs and glowing red eyes. Its body was covered in a hard, chitinous armor. It let out a piercing screech and lunged at them. "Ripper!" Stalker yelled, drawing his plasma carbine. He opened fire, and bright energy bolts slammed into the creature. The Ripper held in pain but continued to advance, its claws glinting in the dim light. Alira jumped aside and fired her energy pistol. A beam of light pierced the creature's shoulder, causing it to stumble back. "There are more of them," Stalker growled, firing at two more Rippers that appeared from the darkness. "We need to get out of here." They retreated into a narrow passage between two ruined buildings. The Rippers pursued them, emitting chilling shrieks. "Where to?" Alira asked, gasping for breath as they ran. "Inside the spire," Stalker replied, pointing to a gaping breach in the tower's base. "It's our only hope." They slipped into a dark and cold corridor inside the spire. Behind them, claws scraped against stone, the Rippers were not far behind. An oppressive atmosphere filled the interior of the spire. The walls were covered in strange symbols pulsating with a faint violet light. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and decay. "Which way now?" Alira whispered, looking around. Stalker raised a hand, signaling for silence. He listened intently. "There's a lift shaft here," he said after a few moments. "If it still works." They found the elevator shaft, but the car was missing. Only rusty cables hung down into the darkness. "Excellent," Alira remarked sarcastically. "Just wonderful." Stalker ignored her. He took a small gravity anchor from his backpack and secured it to one of the cables. "Hold on," he said, activating the device. The anchor began to slowly ascend the cable, pulling Stalker upwards. Alira followed him, clinging to his armor. Below, the furious howls of the Rippers echoed, futilely trying to reach them. Ascending higher and higher into the depths of the spire, Alira felt a strange sensation growing. It was as if the spire itself was watching them, scrutinizing them with its silent gaze. What secrets did this dead tower hold? And what awaited them on the upper levels? Chapter 3, Echoes of the Past. "What are those sounds?" she whispered, pressing closer to Stalker. "I don't know," he replied, his voice tense. "I've never heard anything like it before." Suddenly, something trembled beneath their feet. The walls of the shaft vibrated, and small debris rained down from above. "What's happening?" Alira asked, fear in her voice. "Sounds like instability," Stalker growled. "We need to get out of here as soon as possible." The gravity anchor continued to pull them upward slowly. Dark, abandoned floors flashed past, littered with rusty mechanisms and broken control panels. On some walls, faint holographic images were still visible, fragments of the city's past life. A woman in an elegant dress, a laughing child, a vehicle hovering in the air. Ghosts of a long-gone era. Finally, the anchor stopped at a rusty metal door. Stalker pushed it with his shoulder, and it creaked open loudly, revealing a spacious hall. The hall was illuminated by a strange greenish light emanating from numerous glowing crystals embedded in the walls and ceiling. In the center of the hall stood a massive structure resembling intertwined metal vines, within which pulsed a bright blue orb of energy. "Is that the heart of the city?" Alira whispered in astonishment. Stalker nodded, his eyes burning with a strange light. "Looks like it." But their triumph was short-lived. Figures began to emerge from the shadows in the corners of the hall. They resembled humans, but their bodies were twisted and deformed and their eyes glowed with a dull violet light. Their movements were unnatural, jerky. "The mutated," Stalker growled, raising his carbine. "We're not alone." The mutated made hoarse, guttural sounds and moved towards them. Alira drew her pistol, and the hall filled with the sounds of gunfire and the screeching of mutants. Alira and Stalker retreated towards the central structure, fighting off the encroaching enemies. Energy beams and plasma bolts pierced the air, leaving smoky trails behind them. "We need to get to the heart," Alira yelled, dodging the swipe of a mutant's clawed hand. "Not sure that's a good idea," Stalker replied, knocking two mutants off their feet with the butt of his carbine. "It's radiating too much energy. It could be dangerous." But they had no choice. The mutated were surrounding them, cutting off their escape routes. Stalker lunged forward, forcing his way through the throng of enemies, and reached the base of the central structure. "Alira, cover me," he shouted, starting to climb the metal vines. Alira focused her fire on the mutants trying to reach Stalker. Her pistol worked at its limit, firing one energy blast after another. Finally, Stalker reached the pulsating core of energy. He reached out to touch it, and at that moment, one of the mutants, having crept up from behind, grabbed his leg. Stalker lost his balance and hung from the vine, his hand slipping. "Stalker!" Alira screamed. Chapter 4, The Price of Awakening. "Thanks," he croaked. "No time for thanks," Alira snapped, continuing to fire at the advancing mutants. "Hold on tight and figure out what that thing is." Stalker, gathering his strength, reached for the pulsating core of energy. His fingers brushed against its smooth, cool surface. In that instant, the hall filled with a blinding flash-off light. The mutants froze in place, as if struck by an invisible force. Alira squeezed her eyes shut, shielding them with her arm. When the light subsided slightly, she saw Stalker standing with his palm pressed against the core. A faint blue glow enveloped his body, and his eyes were closed. "Stalker? What's happening?" Alira asked anxiously. Suddenly, one of the mutants let out a pained howl and collapsed to the floor. The others followed suit. Their bodies began to transform strangely, contorting until they became motionless stone statues. The light around Stalker began to fade. He opened his eyes, and Alira saw a strange unearthly glow within them. I can feel it," he whispered, his voice sounding different, deeper, and more melodic. "I can feel the city's energy. It's pain. And it's hope." He pulled his hand away from the core, and the blue glow vanished. The mutated remained lying still, petrified. "What did you do?" Alira asked cautiously. I connected with it," Stalker replied, looking at the core with a new understanding. "The heart of the city isn't just a source of energy. It's a mind. Arcadia's consciousness trapped in this form." "Consciousness?" Alira was stunned. "But how?" "The mutants? They were infected," Stalker explained. "Twisted by the city's pain. But now they reap peace." Suddenly, the floor beneath them trembled. The green crystals on the walls began to flicker faster, emitting an increasingly intense light. "Something's wrong," Alira said, her voice filled with alarm. "The heart is awakening," Stalker said. "But the awakening is painful. The city is in agony." Strange mechanical sounds, clicks and hums, began to emanate from the central structure. The metal vines vibrated, and the blue core of energy pulsed more and more intensely. "We have to get out of here," Stalker said decisively, grabbing Alira's arm. "Now." They ran back towards the lift shaft as the hall around them shook and filled with strange noises. The lift door opened with difficulty, and they jumped inside. The gravity anchor whirred back to life, lowering them down. As they descended, they saw the green light in the hall growing brighter, and the mechanical sounds intensifying. A deafening crash reached them, and the lift shaft shook so violently that they barely managed to stay on their feet. Finally, they reached the base of the spire and scrambled out into the familiar ruins of Arcadia. But the city around them had changed. The dust of oblivion had dissipated, revealing glowing cracks crisscrossing the ruined buildings. Strange energy flow streamed between the ruins, painting the sky in unnatural colors. "What have we done?" Alira whispered in horror, looking at the transformed city. Stalker was silent, his face thoughtful and troubled. "We woke it up," he finally said. "But I'm not sure it was an awakening to life." Chapter 5, A New Beginning or the End. The transformed city pulsed with a strange, unearthly energy. The glowing cracks in the buildings resembled blood vessels through which flowed a venomous liquid. The air was filled with a faint hum and a sense of electrical tension. "Where to now?" Alira asked, glancing around at the ominously glowing ruins. "I don't know," Stalker admitted. "But it's not safe here. We need to find shelter until we understand what's happening." They moved through the ruined streets, trying to stay away from the brightest energy flows. Shards of unknown glowing materials crunched under their feet. It seemed the very matter of the city had changed. Suddenly, a figure sprang from behind the corner of a ruined skyscraper. But it wasn't a mutant. It was a human, dressed in a tattered protective suit, with a weapon in his hands. Seeing them, he cautiously raised his weapon. "Halt! Who are you?" the stranger yelled, his voice trembling. "We're not enemies," Stalker replied, raising his hands in a sign of peace. "We're just seekers." The stranger squinted suspiciously. "Seekers of what?" "There's nothing left here but death and strange light. We were looking for something ancient," Alira replied evasively. "And who are you?" "I'm Kyle," the stranger introduced himself, slowly lowering his weapon. "I'm one of the few who survived the awakening. The awakening? Alira repeated. Yes, Kyle sighed. When the spire started glowing. When the city changed. Many. They couldn't handle it. Their bodies transformed into something terrible. He pointed to a dark alleyway from which hoarse howls could be heard. Alira shivered. So it wasn't just the mutants, she asked. No, Kyle confirmed grimly. There were others. Who were closer to the spire. They became conduits of energy. Mad, glowing creatures that attack anyone they come across. We saw mutants in the spire, Stalker said. But they calmed down after I touched the core. Kyle looked at him in surprise. You touched the heart? And you're alive? I don't know, Stalker replied, looking thoughtfully at his hands. I feel a connection. Booty don't understand what it means. We need to get out of here, Kyle said. There's an old shelter outside the central district. It's safe there, at least for now. They followed Kyle through the winding ruins. Along the way, they had to hide several times from strange glowing figures wandering aimlessly through the streets, making inhuman sounds. Reaching the shelter, a half-ruined underground bunker, they finally caught their breath. Several other survivors, haggard and frightened, were already inside. Kyle told them about what had happened after the Spire's awakening. The energy released by the heart of the city had not only changed the physical appearance of the city but had also affected its inhabitants. Some mutated into aggressive creatures, others became insane conduits of energy, and a few, like Kyle and his group, had managed to survive by hiding in shelters. What now? Asked one of the survivors, a woman with tear-stained eyes. Is there any hope? Stalker looked at Alira. He felt a strange sensation growing inside him, a mixture of knowledge and responsibility. I don't know if there's hope, he said. But I know one thing. We woke up something ancient. And we need to understand what that means for this world. He looked again at the glowing ruins of Arcadia, at the strange new future they had unwittingly created. The price of awakening was higher than they could have imagined. And now they had to figure out whether it was the beginning of a new life or the end of everything. Chapter 6, Whispers of Time. Long before the dust of oblivion shrouded the ruins of Arcadia, this city shone with magnificence. It was the pinnacle of human ingenuity, a soaring oasis amidst an increasingly turbulent planet. The Golden Age, as it was called, was filled with hope and discovery, but at its very core, the seed of decline was ripening. Experiments with energies barely understood led to the Great Sundering, changing the face of the earth and birthing nightmarish creatures. Arcadia, thanks to its technologies, remained a bastion of civilization for a long time, but resources dwindled, and isolation only exacerbated the situation. The legend of the heart of the city was born as a desperate hope for salvation, an echo that reverberated through the dying world and reached the ears of our heroes. Now, allow me to guide you to two souls whose fates intertwined in the ruins of former grandeur. Alira, a child of the wastelands, who knew the bitterness of loss from a young age, carried in her heart an unquenchable thirst for a better world. The memories of blossoming lands, told to her by her dying mother, became her guiding star. The legend of Arcadia was not just a tale for her, but a key to a past she never knew but desperately wanted to reclaim. Years of wandering made her resilient and cautious, but did not extinguish her inner fire. Stalker. He is like a shadow, shrouded in mystery. His past is hidden behind a mask of insolence and the armor that has become his second skin. He appeared from nowhere, his survival skills in the most dangerous zones astonishing even the most hardened veterans of the wastelands. Why did he go to Arcadia? What lies behind the phoenix symbol on his chest plate? These are riddles that may be solved within the pages of this story. Their first meeting was a chance encounter, a flash of violence and salvation in an abandoned scientific complex. Alira saw strength and experience in Stalker, and he, perhaps, sensed in her that very indomitable hope that had long since left this world. Thus began their arduous journey into the heart of darkness, guided by the ghostly light of a legend. Chapter 7, Return to the Present. Kyle, the survivor they encountered, leads them to an underground shelter, the last bastion of sanity in this maddened world. He tells of the nightmare of the awakening, of how the Spire's energy twisted all living things, turning some into bloodthirsty mutants and others into insane conduits of light. An atmosphere of fear and despair hangs in the bunker. The haggard faces of the survivors look at Alira and Stalker with a timid hope, seeking answers to their agonizing questions. What happened? Is there any chance of salvation? Stalker, who touched the heart of the city, feels a strange connection to this place, to its pain and its awakening power. Alira, whose hope has found such an unexpected and terrifying embodiment, cannot hide her horror at the revealed reality. We woke up something ancient, Stalker says, his voice quiet, but with a new weight in it. And we need to understand what it means. At that moment, a new sound echoes from the depths of the city, a drawn-out, ominous howl that makes the bunker walls shudder. Kyle pales. Those are the light sentinels, he whispers. They sense the energy. And they will come here. Now, Alira and Stalker face a new, even more dangerous task, not only to survive in the changed city but also to understand the nature of the power they have awakened and find a way to resist the new threats born from the heart of Arcadia. Their journey has only just begun, and the price of their curiosity may prove to be immeasurably high. Chapter 8, Echoes of the Sentinels. They never come alone, he murmured, frantically looking around. We need to barricade the entrance. While the survivors hastily reinforced the few entrances to the bunker with debris and metal sheets, Alira watched Stalker. His face remained impassive, but a deep thoughtfulness was etched in his eyes. He seemed to be listening to something inaudibly to the others. What do you feel? Alira asked quietly. Stalker slowly turned to her. Pain. Rage. And hunger. They sense the heart's energy and they're drawn here like moths to a flame. Can we fight them off somehow? Asked one of the women, her voice trembling. Kyle shook his head. There are too many of them. They're fast and strong. Our only chance is to wait it out until they lose interest. But Alira felt that passive waiting was not an option. She saw the despair in the survivors' eyes and knew that sooner or later, the sentinels would find a way into the bunker. Stalker, she said decisively. You said you feel a connection to the heart. Maybe you can somehow influence these creatures? Stalker paused for a moment, deep in thought. I don't know. I barely understand what's happening to me. But I feel that this connection might be the key. The key to what? Kyle asked with disbelief. Either to our salvation or to our doom, Stalker replied grimly. But sitting here doing nothing means choosing the latter. He headed towards the main entrance of the bunker. Where are you going? Alira asked anxiously. I need to look them in the eye, Stalker said without turning back. To understand what they are. Alira and Kyle followed him, afraid to leave him alone. The fortified entrance was a narrow corridor blocked with rubble and metal plates. A faint greenish light filtered through the cracks, casting eerie shadows. Suddenly, a deafening impact echoed from outside. The barricade shuddered, and several stones tumbled to the floor. They're here, Kyle whispered, clutching a makeshift spear. Another impact, this time stronger. The metal sheets began to buckle. Let's go, Stalker commanded. We can't hold them here. He led them through a secondary exit, a narrow crawlspace leading into an old ventilation system. Crawling through the cramped, dusty tunnel was agonizing, but it was their only chance to avoid the sentinels. Emerging from the ventilation shaft into another, half-ruined district of the city, they heard furious cries and scraping sounds in the distance. The sentinels had broken through the bunker. Where to now? Alira asked again, looking around at the glowing ruins. Stalker looked towards the Spire of Oblivion, towering over the city like a sinister beacon. There, he said. To the source. If I can understand what connects me to the heart, maybe we can find a way to stop this madness. But that's suicide. Kyle exclaimed. It's swarming with those creatures. Maybe, Stalker replied. But if we stay here, we'll die anyway. It's better to try to find an answer than to just wait for the end. And they moved towards the ominous spire, 3 figures against the backdrop of a dying city, haunted by the echoes of the sentinels and a fragile hope for salvation. Chapter 9, Path Through the Darkness. They're hunting, Kyle whispered, pressing himself against a cold stone wall. They've become smarter. Alira felt the tension mounting. Every rustle, every flash of light made her flinch. She understood that their chances of success were slim, but there was no turning back. Stalker walked ahead, his movements cautious and silent. He seemed to instinctively sense danger. Sometimes he would stop, listening to the hum of energy that permeated the city. The heart. It's beating faster, he said quietly. It's in agony. Several times they had to confront the sentinels. They were terrifying creatures whose bodies glowed from within with a bright violet light. Their movements were unnaturally fast and a mad fire burned in their eyes. In combat, they relied on brute force and furious rage. Stalker held them off with plasma fire, and Alira supported him with energy blasts. Kyle, despite his fear, tried to help, distracting enemies with makeshift grenades and covering their retreat. Once, they were ambushed in a half-ruined building. 3 sentinels surrounded them, cutting off all escape routes. The fight was brutal and swift. Stalker fought with desperate fury, his plasma carbine burning chunks of flesh from the glowing bodies of the enemies. Alira deftly dodged their clawed limbs, striking vulnerable spots with precise shots. Kyle, risking his life, threw himself at one of the sentinels, diverting its attention and giving his companions precious seconds. In the end, they managed to break free, but Kyle was wounded. Blood seeped from a deep gash on his shoulder. We need to stop, Alira said, examining his wound. He needs help. Stalker nodded. They found temporary shelter in an abandoned subway station, deep underground, where the glowing energy of the city was weaker. While Alira bandaged Kyle's wound, Stalker wandered through the dark tunnels, as if searching for something. Soon he returned, holding several intact medical capsules from old supplies. This will help, he said, handing them to Alira. After resting and bandaging Kyle, they continued their journey towards the spire. The underground tunnels were dark and dangerous, but they provided temporary cover from the sentinels. As they approached their destination, the city's energy grew stronger. The tunnel walls glowed faintly, and the air vibrated with the increasing power of the heart. Finally, they reached the base of the spire. Its black mass loomed above them like a silent guardian. The entrance yawned like a dark maw, beckoning them inside. Here, Stalker whispered. We're almost there. But as soon as they took a few steps inside, a chilling howl echoed from the darkness. Something different, larger and more sinister than the sentinels they had encountered before, moved towards them. Its body pulsed with a concentrated violet light, and a palpable rage filled the air. That's a warden, Kyle whispered, his eyes wide with terror. They guard the spire. Their journey to the heart of the city had just begun, and the first obstacle in their path turned out to be the most dangerous of all. Chapter 10, In the jaws of the warden loomed before them, a nightmare made of light and fury. Its massive body pulsed with violet light, casting sinister shadows on the walls of the spire's entrance. Numerous glowing tendrils writhed around its body like living tentacles. The air around it crackled with energy. Back! Kyle roared, instinctively trying to push Alira and Stalker away. But it was too late. The warden let out a deafening roar, and a wave of concentrated energy slammed into them. Alira was thrown backward, hitting her back against a stone wall, and darkness flickered at the edges of her vision. Stalker managed to raise an energy shield, but the impact was so powerful that it knocked him back several meters. The shield crackled and died. Kyle, without such protection, collapsed to the ground, writhing in pain. The warden slowly moved towards them, its glowing eyes burning with undisguised hostility. It raised one of its massive limbs, preparing to deliver a fatal blow. Stalker, fighting through the pain, raised his plasma carbine and opened fire. Bright bolts of plasma slammed into the warden's body, but seemed only to enrage it further. The creature let out another furious roar and brought its limb crashing down where Stalker had just stood. Alira, struggling to her feet, saw that Kyle was unconscious. Fury boiled in her chest. She drew her energy pistol and began firing wildly at the warden, trying to draw its attention. The warden turned its glowing head towards her. Contemptuous rage burned in its eyes. It stepped towards her, ignoring Stalker's shots. At that moment, Stalker made a desperate lunge. He ran towards the warden's side and tried to leap onto its back, grabbing onto the glowing tendrils. The warden roared in surprise and tried to shake him off, thrashing wildly. Alira took advantage of this hesitation and fired several shots into the creature's head, aiming for the spots where the light seemed most intense. One of her shots seemed to hit its mark. The warden shuddered, its violet glow dimming for a moment. Stalker, seizing the opportunity, climbed higher and tried to reach the spot where he felt the warden's main energy was concentrated. But the warden quickly recovered. It lashed out with one of its tendrils, and it struck Stalker with such force that it threw him to the ground. Stalker hit hard and lost consciousness. Alira was left alone, facing the enraged warden. She knew she had no chance in open combat. Her only chance was to use cunning. She darted towards one of the ruined passages, hoping to lure the warden into a trap. The creature, blinded by rage, lumbered after her, smashing everything in its path. Alira ran, weaving between the debris, knowing that the warden was much stronger and faster than her. She felt its hot breath on her back. Suddenly, she dove behind a massive chunk of wall. The warden, unable to stop in time, crashed into it with a deafening roar. The warden roared in surprise and tried to shake him off, thrashing wildly. Alira took advantage of this hesitation and fired several shots into the creature's head, aiming for the spots where, as she guessed, the light was most intense. One of her shots seemed to hit its mark. The warden shuddered, its violet glow dimming for a moment. Stalker, seizing the opportunity, climbed higher and tried to reach the spot where he felt the warden's main energy was concentrated. But the warden quickly recovered. It lashed out with one of its tendrils, and it struck Stalker with such force that it threw him to the ground. Stalker hit hard and lost consciousness. Alira was left alone, facing the enraged warden. She knew she had no chance in open combat. Her only chance was to use cunning. She darted towards one of the ruined passages, hoping to lure the warden into a trap. The creature, blinded by rage, lumbered after her, smashing everything in its path. Alira ran, weaving between the debris, knowing that the warden was much stronger and faster than her. She felt its hot breath on her back. Suddenly, she dove behind a massive chunk of wall. The warden, unable to stop in time, crashed into it with a deafening roar. Alira, seizing the creature's momentary disorientation, quickly ran to the unconscious Stalker and tried to drag him to safety. But the warden was already recovering. It let out a furious shriek and moved towards them again. It seemed like the end. But at that moment, something unexpected happened. A faint blue glow emanated from Stalker's body. His hand, lying on the ground, slowly clenched into a fist. And before the warden could strike, a powerful wave of energy erupted from Stalker's body, throwing the warden backward with such force that it slammed into the wall of the spire. The warden held in pain and fury. Its violet glow became unstable, flickering and dying. Stalker slowly rose to his feet. His eyes burned with a bright blue light, and the energy of the heart of the city swirled around him. "Now you will pay," he spoke in a voice that sounded both like his own and like the echo of an ancient power. Chapter 11, Wrath of the City. Stalker raised his hand, and a sphere of pure blue energy formed in the air before him. He hurled it at the warden, and it shrieked in pain as the energy seared its glowing flesh. The warden tried to counterattack, unleashing streams of violet energy at Stalker, but head-dodged them with ease, as if anticipating the enemy's every move. He moved with a speed and grace he had never displayed before, using the city's energy as an extension of his own body. Alira, shielding the wounded Kyle, watched the scene in astonishment. She had never seen Stalker like this. The power he radiated was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Stalker unleashed several more energy strikes at the warden, each blow inflicting significant damage on the creature. The warden's violet glow weakened, its movements becoming slower and more clumsy. Finally, Stalker soared into the air, surrounded by an aura of blue light. He hovered above the fallen warden and concentrated all his energy into one devastating attack. A powerful beam of blue light pierced the warden's body straight through. The creature let out a final, deathly cry, and its violet glow completely extinguished. The warden's body went limp and crashed to the ground, transforming into a lifeless stone statue, similar to the mutants in the Heart's Chamber. The energy around Stalker began to dissipate. The blue glow faded, and he slowly descended to the ground, breathing heavily. His eyes were once again their usual cold and piercing. "Stalker. What was that?" Alira whispered, still shaken by what she had witnessed. Stalker ran a hand over his face. "I don't know. The heart. It spoke to me. It defended itself." Kyle, regaining consciousness, stared at the defeated warden in horror. "Unbelievable. You killed it." "No," Stalker shook his head. "The city did. I was just a conduit." He turned towards the entrance of the spire, which now seemed less ominous, as if the darkness had retreated before the city's power. "We need to go," he said. "The heart is waiting." They cautiously entered the spire. The atmosphere inside had changed. The oppressive cold was gone, and the strange symbols on the walls now glowed with a soft blue light, as if welcoming them. They ascended higher and higher through winding corridors, feeling the city's energy growing stronger. They encountered no more sentinels. It seemed the awakened consciousness of Arcadia had cleared their path. Finally, they reached the Heart's Chamber. The green crystals on the walls now emitted a bright blue light, harmonizing with the pulsating core in the center. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of peace and power. Stalker approached the heart and reached out again. This time, the touch did not provoke a violent reaction. The energy gently enveloped his palm. "I understand," he whispered. "You're not just a source of energy. You're a memory. The consciousness of this world." The heart of the city responded with a faint pulsating light, as if confirming his words. "But why? Why did you awaken now?" Stalker asked. Fragmented images flooded his mind, the flourishing of Arcadia, the great sundering, the agony of a dying city, and hope. The hope brought by Alira and Stalker, their desperate yearning for revival. "You were waiting," Stalker realized. "You were waiting for someone who could hear you." He looked at Alira and Kyle. They had witnessed the awakening of an ancient power, a power that could either save this world or destroy it completely. And now they had toedside what to do with this newfound knowledge. Chapter 12, Echoes of Hope, Finale, The Heart. "It's not just a source of energy," Stalker began. "It's Arcadia's memory, its consciousness, trapped in this form. It awakened because it sensed hope." He looked at Alira. "Your determination to find a way to revive this world, your faith. That was the spark." Then he turned his gaze to himself. "And my connection to the past, which I didn't fully understand myself." "What connection?" Alira asked. Stalker was silent for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. I don't remember my past. My memories are fragmented, like dreams. But since I touched the heart, I've started seeing glimpses of this city. Feeling its pain. And its will to survive." He touched the phoenix symbol on his armor. "This symbol. It feels familiar. Like it's a part of me that I forgot." The heart of the city emitted a soft blue light, as if in agreement. "It was waiting," Stalker continued. "Waiting for someone who could hear it, someone who could become a conduit for its will." "And what does that mean for us?" Kyle asked. Stalker looked at the ruined city, at the glowing cracks and flows of energy. "Arcadia is dying, but there's still power within it. Power capable of healing this land. Or destroying it completely. The heart wants to live. It wants to restore what was lost." "But how?" Alira asked. "There are only 3 of us. We are the beginning, Stalker replied. The heart showed me the way. The energy wheezy is unstable. It's tearing the city apart from the inside. But it can be redirected. It can boost for healing. He explained that the heart of the city needed a conductor, someone who could channel its energy. And for some reason, that role seemed to have fallen to him. It's dangerous, Kyle said. We've seen what that energy does to people. Yes, Stalker agreed. But if we do nothing, everything will perish. This is our only chance. Alira looked at Stalker, at the determination in his eyes. She remembered her long journey, her unwavering hope. And she knew she couldn't back down now. I'm with you, she said. Kyle, after a moment of hesitation, nodded. Me too. Stalker turned back to the heart. He closed his eyes, trying to establish a deeper connection with the city's consciousness. Images flooded his mind, ancient technologies, schematics of energy flows, surviving sections of the city's network. He opened his eyes. We need to reach the central control complex. From there, we can redirect the heart's energy. The journey there was long and perilous. They had to avoid the remaining sentinels and unstable energy zones. But now they were guided not only by hope but by purpose. Reaching the central complex, they found ancient but still functioning control consoles. Stalker, as if guided by an unseen hand, began to input commands, rerouting the energy flows. The city around them began to change. The glowing cracks dimmed, and energy concentrated in specific nodes. The process was painful for Arcadia. The ground trembled, and the groans of metal and stone echoed through the air. But gradually, chaos gave way to order. Finally, Stalker finished. The city fell silent. The light became soft and even. The energy flow stabilized. They emerged from the central complex and saw a new dawn breaking over Arcadia. The ruins were still visible, but new life was pushing through them. Sprouts of plants began to appear in some places, and the air became cleaner. The heart of the city continued to pulse in the spire, but now its light was not sinister but life-giving. Their journey had ended. They had found not just a source of energy, but a sleeping consciousness that they had awakened. They didn't know what the future held, but they had given a dying world a second chance. The echoes of oblivion gradually faded, giving way to the whispers of hope. Stalker looked at the phoenix symbol on his armor and for the first time felt a faint echo of memories. Perhaps his past was somehow connected to this city, to its fall and its rebirth. Alira looked at the rising sun, illuminating the ruins of Arcadia. Her dream had begun to come true. Kyle, standing beside them, saw in this not only salvation but the beginning of a new era. And in the silence of the reviving city, they heard a faint, barely perceptible echo, the echo of hope for the future.